Good to be back together again. Carlos, go ahead and hit that next screen because guess what? It's Happy National Coaches Day, y'all. Welcome back. We are so pleased to have you. Thank you for all you do. I'm Anthony Thomas, President-elect of Nomad, Athletic Director at Francis Parker School here in San Diego. And I'm just feeling so blessed to have this opportunity to bring us back together again. It's been a long time, and now we're here and we have such a great presentation for you today, mainly because we have talked, if you've been with us in the past, we've talked about self-care of our student athletes. We've talked about self-care of ourselves. But today, it's going to be about how we support our coaches. Our coaches are eh, they're the heartbeat of our programs. If we don't have them, we don't have anything. And now in this day and age, they are facing more challenges than they've ever faced before. And so how do we support them as coaches of the coaches? How do we support them? And so I am so excited to have our guest speaker on today. Her and I are longtime friends, and she's doing amazing things, and she's going to provide so much insight to this conversation and what we're doing. And really happy to see so many of our friends joining us today from across the country. Good to see everyone. Carlos, go ahead and hit that next slide. So today we're going to be talking about building your toolkit to support your coaches. What do coaches need in this day and age? And I am so pleased to welcome Lisa Bonta Sumii to our Nomad webinar today. And, we have always had the habit of doing these grand introductions for our speakers. And sometimes we lose sight of time when we do that. Alicia knows all about that. So I'm going to let Lisa just introduce herself and what she wants us to know about her, and then we're going to get started. So Carlos, go ahead. Lisa, welcome. Thank you, love, for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for having me here. I'm proud of you and all the work that you're doing with Nomad and just in general at Francis Parker as well, and being a leader in the space, and just am honored and grateful that you invited me to address, this group of astound people. So thank you so much. Let's see. Oh gosh, Anthony's asking me to talk about myself. Okay, so again, my name is Lisa Bonta Sumii. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So basically I am a therapist. I've been a psychotherapist, same interchangeable psychotherapist with over 23 years of clinical experience. And I didn't always work with athletes, but recently, as we all know, with the pandemic and seasons changing, the way people show up to sports is changing, especially at the high school and collegiate level. It's an important conversation. There's a culture shift going on around mental health in sports right now. I'm also the first ever mental health and sport performance coach at the Oakland Reach Sports Club, a men's pro soccer team in the USL here based out of Oakland. I'm repping them as well today. And that's an important position and a really, one of the first ever in the league, much less, at this level of men's pro soccer. I also work with players, former and current, in the NFL and their families. I'm also in the mental health registry for the USOPC, so I get the opportunity to work with Olympic hopefuls and their families. With the platform that I have, that the Roots has given me, people have been asking me, well, pro soccer and pro sports isn't the only place that we need this kind of support. And I agreed. So everybody was like, can you do this? I'm like, I can't. So what I'm going to do is actually create a company where Black and brown people are prioritized to serve the student athletes, coaches, and the entire ecosystem. So trainers, the team dynamic, anybody who's touching the sport ecosystem. So I have a team of about 10 practitioners, and we'll talk about the difference between therapists, licensed mental health clinicians, and mental performance consultants. I'll talk about the difference and how they can both serve the overall mental health of anyone in the sport ecosystem. I also host Staff Mindset Podcast, for a little over a year now, and that's super cool and fun to talk about mental health in sports with anyone who has their own experiences or perspectives on mental health in sports. I played soccer growing up. I had a career-ending injury that was really, really tough on my mental and physical health. My family really didn't have the resources to help me recover from that, and I had to grieve the loss of that and went to a little bit of a dark place there. And then I'm the mom to a 15-year-old high-performing softball player. She's the one that actually inspired me to shift entirely working with athletes and the athlete ecosystem and in sports. And I'm grateful for her. It's funny, like our kids can teach us about ourselves even when we're not asking them to. And so I also, just want to highlight that I do work with high schools now, me and my team, and colleges, including St. Mary's College of California out here and Cal State University Bakersfield for our second year now. So that's a little bit about me. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. So y'all, when I say we got an expert, we have an expert, and she's going to help us out today. Now, listen, this is going to be a little bit out of the box in some ways. So what we're talking about here really has to do with how we're going to support our coaches, but we're going to go about it in a lot of different ways. So bear with us. But if you have questions, no matter what part of it, throw it into the chat. We have monitors of that. They're going to stop us when those questions come up in the chat, and we will answer it right then. So get your coffee, get seated, get comfortable, bear down with us, and enjoy this conversation on what we can do to build our toolkit. Because what we're going to cover today, think about it. In today's environment, coaches need coaching and support, right? They need relationships and the knowledge that someone cares about them who also knows what they are experiencing, right? A lot of times, as ADs, sometimes our coaches feel like, well, you're not in the trenches with me. So how do you know what's really going on, And we got to be there for them now more than ever, with everything that they are having to deal with. We got to be there for them. And some of us don't have it easy. Time is really of the essence. And some of us don't have time, right? We got, 3, 4, 5 different titles behind our names and what we're trying to run and what we're trying to do. I'm fortunate because I'm a full-time athletic director. So I can make the time to work with my coaches, talk to them. They know that I have their back. And we're going to talk about scenarios for you today. I'm going to give you some examples of things that are going on right now in my program. I'm like, whoa, I can't even believe this is happening, but we have to be there for them, because if we're not there for our coaches, then our programs are going to have a lot of issues. So we're going to go through all of that. But first, go ahead, Carlos, change. First, I'm going to get us all on the same page by asking Lisa to talk about the definition of mental health. We're going to look at mental performance. We're going to talk about all of those things to really put us in the space on where this is all at. And Lisa is one of the leaders in this area here in California, if not the country. So Lisa, go ahead and help us now. Now, listen, Lisa, we just simple athletic directors, girl. Use some simple English now. Don't get too crazy on us, but help us understand what's going on in the world.
Yes, sir. Will do, Anthony. I mean, I think it's important to be, like Anthony says, on the same page about what we mean when we talk about mental health. There is still a huge, huge stigma around even using the words mental health. So I want to break it down a little bit. Mental health, we all have it, just like we all have physical health. It's a part of our health, right? So let's just sit with that. We all have mental health. We all exist on a continuum, okay? So some might be more mentally healthy than others for whatever reason, but I want to just normalize that we all have mental health, okay? And it is basically how we think, feel, and act, like period. Our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. That's what it is. Period. Don't make it bigger than it is. Period. Like, I'm breaking it down. The level of mental health that we have and how we take care of it is determined how we handle stress. We all get stressed and have stressors in our lives. What's our response? what is in our toolkit and toolbox that we can use to handle those stressors with grace, and be forgiving and understanding, and taking full control of the things that we have control over, and recognizing what we don't, and leaving that to the side. How we relate to others, so ADs, how we relate to our coaches is determined by our level of mental health, the strength, the resilience, the sort of toughness of our mental health. It determines how we relate to one another and how we make our own healthy choices. And we're going to get into some scenarios where it can definitely go left, but it's all about like where we are, how we take care of it. One thing me and Anthony were talking about, as well as being clear about what mental health is not. Mental health and mental illness are not synonymous. I'm gonna say it again. Mental health and mental illness are not synonymous. So much in our society, people use it synonymously, and that's a mistake and misinformation. Again, mental health, we all have it. Just like we all have physical health, physical illness is not the same as mental illness. So why would mental health and mental illness be the same? They're not. A mental illness is when our mental health is challenged and those individuals are not able to have the resilience and the tools to handle those stressors. That's when it becomes that. And when it becomes an impact on all of our levels of functioning, whether it's in our relationships, at home, etc. So I can go into that a little bit more, but Anthony's telling me to keep it simple right now. So I just want to say simply, mental health is not mental illness. It's totally different. Okay.
Right on. Thank you, Lisa. Go ahead and tackle mental performance.
So our overall mental health can be determined by if we have the proper support to, again, manage those stressors. Mental performance is basically focuses on providing every performer / athlete the resources to power their inner edge by strengthening the ability to perform consistently, as well as the ability to thrive. So this piece is about how that performer, that athlete shows up on the field. What's their mental game? How do they address it? Do they even acknowledge that probably 80 to 90% of every sport is mental? Like 100% of the athletes I talk to can recognize that, but about 3 to 5% are working on their mental game. So at its core, mental performance on the field of play entails training on mental tools that lead to the development of mental skills.
Now, Lisa, let me ask you, because like in terms of our coaches, like I was just at my volleyball game last night and I'm watching my volleyball coach and he's out there performing too. I mean, he's moving up and down the court. He's trying to get the girls, in the right positions, all those different things, and then after the game, it looked like he'd been in a 12-round boxing match. So he's performing, so I want everybody to understand, as Lisa was talking about athletes, but our coaches are performing every time they're out there too. And what I try to get some of my administrators here at my school to understand is that imagine if our teachers in the classroom had to perform with the parents in the classroom watching them. That's what our coaches are doing every day. And some of us have more parents who think they know more than we do. So how that gets down. We got to handle that business. But that are all stressors on our coaches. So I want us to understand that this definition of mental performance and mental health has a lot to do with our coaches and how they perform. And I want to talk specifically about, and we'll touch on this a little bit later too. But when I look at my male coaches, they have a hard time. We as men have a hard time expressing that we need help, right? We got these egos, we got all this draw, we have to think that we're too tough to do this or to talk about this. And even some of us as ADs might go, man, I don't have time for this. I don't want to get into this soft stuff about it. I'm telling y'all, you have to find the time. We are not in the day and age of just, where our coach, look, I had a coach in high school who I swear he didn't even know my name because he called me every other name in the book, right? So I'm like, that's rough. We're not in that day and age anymore. We're not in the fire and brimstone world. We got to understand what is being presented to us, and our coaches have to understand that. So that's our job, We are the coaches of the coaches. We got to prepare our coaches for what's in front of them and making sure that we touch base. And that's part of that relationship building and all of those things. But this idea that Lisa's sharing with us now about mental performance entails this training of mental tools that lead to the development of mental skills. Carlos, go ahead to the next slide. I'm gonna let Lisa just talk us through these mental skills and mental tools.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a great point around, that coaches are performers. ADs are too, in meetings, having to present, having to figure out budget, having to figure, so we all perform, and being able to manage those moments and spaces where we are performing. So, the first one here is the mental skill of motivation. Like, I'm wondering how many people thought that motivation was a skill that we could develop it. Like, I don't know. Some people think like, oh, you're either motivated or you're not, or you're born with that fire or you're not. No, it's not a genetic trait. It's something we train on. Okay. And that we can develop. We can have a higher level of motivation, more sustained level of motivation throughout the game, the season, whatever pocket of time we're talking about. And the mental tools that we train on to develop motivation, one is goal setting. The other is imagery. So goal setting, there are different kinds of goals. So we're breaking it down. So we got motivation, mental skill, training on the mental tools that develop motivation. Goal setting is one, imagery is one. So goal setting, there are three different kinds: outcome goal, process goal, and performance goals. I won't go totally into it if people have questions about it, but I'll say this about goal setting. An outcome goal might be on a football team. We want to make it to the playoffs this season. That's the outcome goal. Big picture, we name it and then we kind of put it to the side. Process goal is, what do we do as a team or individual to get to that goal, the outcome goal? Does that mean we are practicing 3 times a week from this time to this time for this many months? That's a process goal that's measured in the SMART goal format. So it's got to be specific, measurable. So we are totally in control of that goal. Okay. Performance goals are, what are the steps that we need to do to be able to show up to those 3 days a week of practices, right? We got to stay healthy. So what does that mean? Hydration, sleep, nutrition, etc. And we write those down. The training is writing them down. Writing down your goals, talking about them, keeping them alive. The brain likes that. The brain wants to be reminded what we're doing. And so we have to write it. That's the training. So maybe I write my outcome goal once every 2 weeks in my sport journal, which I highly recommend. My process goals, maybe I write every other day to keep it alive in our brain and keep the motivation high. If we know what we're working on, the motivation can stay high. And then the performance goals, maybe we write those every day. 1 sentence. Can we take 2 seconds to write it down? So this can happen at the AD level. You all can practice this to stay motivated in what you're doing. Coaches can do this, and then coaches can teach their athletes to do this as well. Okay. Imagery is another, again, mental tool to help motivation stay high and sustained. So imagery is different than visualization. Visualization is a component of it, but imagery is imagining with all your senses a certain scenario. So if we switch from football to soccer, one of the things that we need to do in soccer is take penalty kicks. Okay. High potential for performance anxiety and straight up stress, depending on the situation of the game, right? So what someone who might do, a player who might do, is create an imagery script. That's part of the training, that sees, hears what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you're tasting, brings in all senses to make that, to imagine, to image that PK being successful. So it's like a creative writing, like writing a scene. And then you train on that imagery script. You write it as often as you can. Whatever regular means to you, whatever's realistic. So again, in review, imagery and goal setting are mental tools that can help in the development of the mental skill of motivation.
All right, that's just me because we're having a fire drill, of course, right in the middle of my webinar. But we gonna keep it moving. We gonna keep it moving. Um, just to touch on that, Lisa, I just want to be clear with the ADs to understand these are the opportunities when we need to meet with our coaches and ahead of the season and talk to them about this, talk to them about their own goal setting, have them talk to you about what they imagine the season going to look like and what they're going to be prepared to do. I know a lot of us have these preseason meetings, so these are the things that you want to try to do. So we're giving you these ideas, these concepts where you can take this. Now you're gonna get ready to start basketball season soon in the winter season. So take these concepts, sit down with your coach, make some time. This is a way that you start to build a relationship with your coach and give them the full picture that this is not about X's and O's per se. This is not about, hey, you got to win a certain amount of games or we're going to talk about your job. That's none of that should even be in the conversation. It should be about what they are expecting out of the season, how we can support them. Those are the conversations that you should be having at the beginning of the season with coaches. So Lisa, how about mental skill number 2? And I'm gonna mute until this alarm goes off.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, good job talking through that too. No, and it's a great point because then it's an automatic talking point as the season progresses to check in. So how's it going with motivation right now, and how are you feeling about motivation? How are you supporting how do you feel about how you're supporting your coaches to stay motivated? So it's a direct in, and then a conversation can happen from that. So the next skill is self-confidence. Again, who knew that was a skill? Not a genetic component that you're either born with or not. Like I come out the womb with a disposition to be like self-confident, and it's always going to be that way. And if I don't come out being self-confident, it's always going to be that way. Not true. Not true. We can develop this skill. Okay. And that's very empowering for some people to realize that, and that they're fully in control of it. So the mental tools that we use to develop self-confidence, one is self-talk. So remember, we talked about the definition of mental health, what we think, how we feel, and how we behave. How we talk to ourselves is going to determine how we think about ourselves and how we feel about ourselves and how we behave on behalf of that. Okay. So if we can create some positive self-talk statements, that helps us stay in the more positive way around this. So self-talk might be like, I belong here 1,000%. I'm not going to doubt that, because a lot of our athletes are like, what do they call it? Sort of don't feel like they belong, and then they play and think that way, and they're like down like this and like tentative and not as confident. If you're like, yo, I belong here, I belong in this space, that could be an example. Or something like, I am confident no matter what happens around me. So I'm taking full control of the internal, what's going on inside me, no matter what's going on the outside. Like I just asked my baby girl, I was like, she has a tournament this weekend. I'm like, what do you think about the lineup of teams that we're playing on Saturday? She's like, I don't care. I'm like, I trained you well. Like, it doesn't matter who she's playing. She's gonna show up and do her. It does not matter, these external factors, because we are talking to ourselves in a positive way. We're going to think then positive, and then our bodies and language and the way we show up to ourselves and our teammates is also positive. Okay. So the training can be designing 2 positive self-statements that you again write on a regular basis, whatever regular is to you, writing them down in your sports journal, in your coach's journal, in your AD journal, whatever. The next one is creating routines. That's another way that we are in full control of how we sustain and develop self-confidence. So some examples of creating routines might be a pre and post either training / practice or performance routines, which is the games. So I'll take, let's say a competition, a game. It's going to be a little bit more, emotional, high performance, some stress, some anxiety. How we feel in a game is very different than how we feel in a practice. Same with the coaches. How they feel showing up to a game is very different than showing up to a practice. And so a pre and post, like what might a coach do to ground themselves, to support themselves before they go into a game, whatever that might be. Is it praying? Is it taking a couple deep breaths? Is it eating a certain meal? What is it for the coach that they need to do to kind of be fully in control and move through it so they can be present and perform during that game? Post is, how do we wind down? How do we wind down? How do we reflect? How do we look at ourselves and see what I could have done better in this game, or the things that I'm like, I killed it in this game? Again, the coach's journal, writing that stuff down. The brain likes that. Again, this is to help the mental health of everyone involved. Okay, to stay, and I just want to say this, I'm probably going to get into it, but this is also this month, Suicide Prevention Month, Suicide Awareness Month. The fact that we're doing this is we are honoring this month, and it shouldn't just be this month, but moving forward, these things are going to help give you guys the tools to give to your coaches, and the coaches can prevent suicide or the thinking around it for all of their athletes if these steps can be integrated. It matters and makes a difference.
Thank you, Lisa. Just so everybody knows, the building is not burning down and we are good to go. We all of us in this room right now, we all just manage different things at different times. So that's outstanding. Lisa, what do you do if you got a coach that throws up pregame and then drinks postgame? Should I be concerned about that?
Very concerned.
Okay.
Because we know that, well, I'll let you know that throwing up before a game most likely is not he had some bad food. Okay. That is a physical manifestation of emotion. So it could be stress, nervousness, all of that, right? And then throwing up is gonna manifest that. So there's a conversation there. Knowing that, you can say as an AD, did you have something bad to eat? You can check that out and rule it out. What's going on? How are you feeling right now? Kind of thing. And then that's not a good pre-game routine to get settled into like, accept that I'm throwing up every time. It's also not a great post-game routine, because when we drink alcohol, we're trying to maybe stuff or like not feel any of the emotions, especially if we lose. Fuck it. I don't like, sorry, my bad. I curse. So that's just kind of.
Ooh, that might be the first time, Lisa. Wow.
Good. How many minutes are we into this? That's the first time I dropped the F-bomb. That's like.
Yeah, that's actually a record for you, 30 minutes. That's not bad.
Sorry, you're seeing all of me right now, people. But so drinking after a game is not, I think it goes without saying, not a healthy post-game routine. You're stuffing your feelings. You're not a good model. You're not present. You're not mindful. You're not doing that reflective practice of what did I do that I feel good about? What areas do I need to grow? You need to lean into those emotions, not numb them, not pretend they ain't there, not try to drink them away. We need to lean into them and support our coaches in doing so as well.
And that's a great segue for mental skill number 3, Lisa.
Yes, sir. So this one is emotion regulation. To break it down, how do we keep our emotions in check when we're performing? If not in life, but we're going to keep it to performing. Okay. ADs, you're going to have emotions about a certain situation. Seeing your coach throw up before a game and then drink after, you're going to feel some kind of way about it, right? So how do we take care of our emotions? How do we have space between what we feel and how we act? Teaching our coaches to do the same. How do we show up in line with our values, not talking out the side of our neck, but being very intentional about the emotions we do show. It's okay to be emotional, but don't let the emotions run you. That makes sense. So again, it's a skill. It's a skill to learn how to regulate your emotions. I'm not going to go into all 4 of these in depth, but I think that what we want to talk about and name is that the primary 4 mental tools to develop the skill of being able to keep your emotions in check First one is self-awareness. How aware of you are you about what things might take you over the top and what things don't? What situations might make you hot and like be like, ugh, and what things like, I'm cool with that. Like knowing that self-awareness. And that comes from the prior kind of talk about self-reflection, really evaluating who you are. Reappraisal is being able to look at a certain situation and rename it. So, damn, we lost. And that's embarrassing. We lost and that's embarrassing is one way we can look at it. And then we have feelings about that, right? But what if it's like, we were outside of our league that day, even though we played really well, our performance does not match the outcome. So we can play really, really well against a really, really good team and lose, right? So this is an opportunity for us to grow and learn about ourselves and our team. That's another way of looking at it. So then you have a different emotion besides, oh, damn, we lost. And I feel, I'm not going to curse again, but all kinds of feelings. But instead it's like, okay, we showed up, we performed, the outcome does not reflect how we showed up. We can be proud of that. Meditation is another way, another mental tool to help us regulate our emotions. There's so many benefits to meditation. And it's not you like sitting in the corner with your legs crossed talking about, it doesn't need to be like that. For those of us who are physical and athletic, which I know all you are or have had a history of that, you probably all, I'd say 80 to 90% have been athletes themselves and have been coaches yourselves, right? So there's a way that meditation, I like the body scan, where you can just sit here, you don't have to close your eyes, but just slow down, be calm and kind of scan your bodies. How am I feeling in my head, my jaw, my throat, my chest? These are some places we hold stress. Just scanning, checking in and noticing. That can be a form of meditation. It's actually called a body scan. I do with a lot of my athletes before we start our talk for 3 minutes. Meditation. Don't let it intimidate you. There's lots of different benefits to meditation. Increased optimism, increased joy, increased ability to stave off cold. So an increased immune system. It decreases our feelings of depression and anxiety when a regular practice is in play. What is a regular practice? You determine that. Am I regularly going to meditate 10 minutes every week? Okay, that's what's within your ability. Cool. Something. Breath work is another thing that really helps with the emotion regulation, because a lot of times it's physiological, the way our emotions come out. When I say that, it shows up in our body. So, fast heart rate, sweating, talking fast can be a sign of my ability to regulate how I'm feeling is kind of out of my realm right now. So breath work, and I'll teach you one really important type of breath work, which is called box breathing. Some probably have heard of this. What it is creating a box with your breath. So the inhale on the count of 4, stop at the top for the count of 2, and then exhale for the count of 4, and then stay at the bottom for the count of 2. So 4, 2, 4, 2, that's a box. So if you do a series of 3 boxes, that is telling the brain, I'm safe, I'm good. I don't need to be in panic mode right now, because the brain is archaic, always searching and scanning for stress and danger. Our breath can tell the brain, I'm good. I'm good. No need to stress, no need to trip. And then you can calm down, your body gets looser, and then you get to perform physically and mentally at your peak. So that's just a little touch on each of these 4 mental tools that, when trained upon, can continue the development of being able to keep your emotions in check and be appropriate in the way that you express yourself.
Thanks, Lisa. That's outstanding. So I'm really hoping that ADs that we are, we'll share this information with you, obviously, but these are just some tips and tricks that you can pull your coaches in. Sometimes we struggle oh, why do we need to have the coaches meeting this week? I don't know what to talk about, or what are we going to talk about? you know, these are some things that you can just pull out of your bag and say, hey, this is important. If you don't spend time with it, then it's suggesting that it's not important. So I think these are some ideas that you can certainly use. Carlos, let's move into the next thing. So we're going to talk about a scenario here. And Carlos, I'm going to read this scenario out loud. And then maybe if we could stop sharing the screen and get everybody up on the screen. And just so that if anybody wants to respond to this, we will. I'm going to take the spotlight off of myself, and I'm going to take the spotlight off of Lisa right now so that we can all get on the same screen together. But here's a scenario. And we've all probably had this. I hope it didn't happen to you. But after a hard-fought football game where your team suffered a close loss, you witnessed a parent approach your head coach. It began a heated exchange. What do you do? And how do you support your coach afterwards? So Carlos, let's stop sharing. And anybody want to just unmute yourself? I think we're allowing you to do that. If not, I'm about to let you. Yeah. Unmute yourself and tackle this scenario. Someone share. Anybody, as soon as you turn off your mic, let me know. And introduce yourself when you do it. And you don't have to have a football team to answer this question, by the way. Just be clear.
I'll take a crack at it.
Hey, Omar, good to see you again, brother.
All right now. My name's Omar Sanchez. I'm the Director of Athletics for St. Mary's College High School in Berkeley. I actually had this incident last year with the staff that I had, and I think it's important to understand time and place and approach things with a place of calm, because obviously in a heated game, I mean, I coached college ball for 20 years, so I've been in a lot of heated games, so I understand kind of the coaching side of it. And so trying to be a support to the coach, but also helping the parent understand there's a time and a place for these things. And for me, I tend to set parameters with families in parameters and expectations at the start of the season, so that they understand what non-negotiables are. And one of those non-negotiables for me is you don't ever approach a coach. And if there's an issue with the coach, I am their point person. I want my coaches to coach. I don't want them to worry about parents. So
that's outstanding. Omar, was there any follow-up to after the incident? Was any follow-up with your coaching staff?
Well, the parent ended up apologizing because really they were in the wrong to even do that. And with my coaching staff, I tend to meet with my football staff at least once a month. I met with them at the start of the season, kind of also discussed with them our approach and our communication standard with our student athletes and our families. I tend to deal with the communication with the parents themselves, but I get the information from them. And so the follow-up with the coaches was more of making sure we understand what our core values are and what we stand for and what we should stand for in the face of adversity, which is not always easy.
Right on. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Omar, for sharing.
Anthony, may I comment? Anthony, may
Yeah,
I
sure.
So
Yep.
Omar, that's awesome. Like, I appreciate you sharing that. It was a real situation. I think, what you're highlighting around the sort of expectations of parents and then expectations of coaches, how to handle parents is key. Like, even a document that everyone signs. I know different schools and organizations have like a document of like a 24 to 48 hour cooling off period before a parent can approach a coach about something, because their emotions are high, the coach's emotions are high, and it's not going to be a productive conversation anyway. Why is it it's going to be happening like right after game on the field, like so a cooling off period, and then really insisting that the coach, if a parent does not abide by that cooling off period, saying, all you have to do is say, we're not talking about this right now. Please respect the cooling off period. Set the boundary and don't engage. Right. So I think that's a really great point, Omar. So thank you for that piece.
Good. Anybody else want to tackle this? I can share one piece with you. I've had this situation happen, and we dealt with it the same way. We have our parent meetings in before. We talked about communication and how we go about communicating. That's all fine and dandy. I think we all do that probably really well for the most part. The thing that I was concerned about is that for my coach is that the season was it has been at the time long and hard, and it started to take an impact on him. And so, probably about a few days later after the incident happened, I reached out to my coach and I just said, "How are you doing?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm good, I'm good." And I'm like, "No, stop, slow down, bro." I said, "How are you really doing?" Because you know you were you were really close to exploding on that parent, and so I want to know how you're harboring all of that. What's that doing to you mentally? How is that impacting your coaching? Because you were close. I was really worried for that parent for a second there. And then he says, "Hey, can we talk about this later?" So I respected that. So I actually took him out to breakfast a couple of days later, and we really had a heart to heart. And he was talking about some of his stressors, some things that are going on in his life, some of his frustrations in and around um, you know kids with injuries, and who they're going to play. We have we don't have a lot of depth in our football program, so he was concerned about that. And I really had to reassure him that, listen, your job is not to just win football games. Your job is to motivate, inspire, and love these kids. That's what I am evaluating you on. You cannot worry about that at all. So there was just that reassurance and that conversation that I had with my coach, that we all have to be able to have those conversations and be able to support our coaches in that way. And how do you go about doing that is by building those relationships prior to the season, and setting up, times to meet with them and just doing check-ins. I tell my coaches all the time, I want to hear from you at least once a week, you know, just to make sure that you're good. You might be like, everything's fine, everything's fine. I'm like, that's fine. I just want to touch base with you. So there's some things that you can do with that. But again, it goes back to, don't be satisfied the first time with answering, when asking the question, how are you? Because that means something totally different now, post pandemic, than it did, pre pandemic. Right. So you might have to ask that a number of times. So, anybody else? We have one more scenario. We got about 12 minutes left. So, anybody else want to chime in on this one, or a similar situation that they've experienced in their program, or if you have a question? Mr. Fisher, I see your hand, brother.
Yes. So I just wanted to share with the group one thing that my football coach did that I thought was great, and it was a proactive approach. Um, he actually, on, I believe it was Thursday mornings or Friday mornings, I can't remember. Um, he would have donuts and coffee available for the parents, and he would essentially invite the parents in to go through the game plan for that upcoming football game. That way, in the stands, they were able to witness who may have missed an assignment, or, if this particular defense was to shift to the right and this individual was not shifting at the correct angle, or whatever the case may be. It really allowed the parents to be able to see what it is that was what the expectation was, and if in fact their kid was meeting the expectation or not. So then what it did was opened up conversation. He had a segment at the very beginning of that meeting before he dove into the upcoming game plan. He had a segment where they talked about the last game that took place, and they spoke to execution and things of that nature. And it was just really interesting to see how, when parents were given that space and they were able to see for themselves what the game plan was and whether or not it was executed or not, the conversation really stemmed around, how can I support you as coach, more than the parents actually attacking the coach, because they understood what the expectation was, and they were a part of, giving a heads up as to what they were trying to accomplish for that day. So he also gave me a space to be able to speak to, different game protocols and things like that. So that, again, parent comes to the game and maybe they have a sideline pass, but their cousin who's from out of town does not. It's going to be very difficult to allow that group to be on the sideline. So I just thought that was an interesting approach, that he tried to be proactive and get our parents to really understand this is what we're trying to accomplish, and I want you to be in on knowing what it is that we're trying to accomplish, so that we're all on the same page at the conclusion of the game, which eliminated a lot of what is being spoke to in this scenario in terms of parents wanting to have a conversation with the coach immediately after. Number one, there was a space already created. Number two, they already knew what the expectation was.
Yeah, that's outstanding. That's outstanding, Tony. That's a bold move by a coach. I love that. The only concern I has that if the parent then calls out the kid like, your son just messed up, then, now you got fights in the stands. But we got security for that. But I think that's great.
Anthony, I want to add to that. What this is showing me is that to be reminded that parents are human, coaches are human. We have real life stuff going on, and that's going to bleed over into how we communicate with one another. Because as a mom to a high performing athlete, I'd be like, don't you mess with my baby girl. I'm about to, there's something that's invoked. So it might not even be, I don't care about what she was supposed to do. Don't talk to her like that. Or don't address her like that. So it's like, there's going to be the mama bear or the dad coming in talking about like, that's my boy, that's my girl, whatever. So like recognizing that, and that goes into that, we can get deep on that. We won't today. And then coaches, holding that and putting them in their proper place performance wise. But sometimes whether or not, their kid performs or not, they're still going to have something to say.
Yeah.
So
Lisa, I think I saw a little Delta Sigma Theta come out of you just right then and there. I think I saw a little DST come out.
Always, she always lurking. She's lurking.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, scenario 2. Let's tackle this one. In your weekly visit to observe practice, you notice your coach is a bit out of sorts. They are yelling at their players and being negative. You ask the assistant coaches, everything is okay, and they tell you, coach has been stressed out lately and is overwhelmed by the amount of injuries and what they describe as excuses the team uses for not performing. What do you do with that? Go ahead and put us all back on the screen, Carlos. Who would like to tackle this one?
Where did the question go? I was looking for it. So I could read. Sorry.
It's okay. Basically you're at your practice, you're going to visit one of your practices that we all do, and you just notice your coach is just being a little out of sorts, yelling a little bit more than he's used to doing, being negative, calling kids out individually, and you ask your assistant coach what's going on, and they say, hey, he's stressed out a little bit. He's got, we've got some injuries that he's worried about, and he's frustrated with the team excuses in and around performing. So how do you address that? What do you do to support that coach?
I mean, I think in that moment,
Introduce yourself, superstar.
Hi, I'm Amanda Snyder from Bixby, Oklahoma, but I work at Broken Arrow High School. It's in Oklahoma, and just excited to be here. I love my Nomad friends and appreciate this awesome opportunity to learn, because even like you said, we as ADs struggle with this when we have a lot going on. And I'm in grad school, and I'm associate AD now. And so I've had a lot taken on. My son has games, all that to say, this is really good to hear this stuff, because it's a good reminder to breathe and meditate and focus on the things, and you have to find time. But what I was going to say about the coaches, if you see a coach acting that way, and that's why I feel like this is a good reminder for me to get out of my office, go watch practices, stop sitting behind my desk, because I could do this all day. And I don't like that because that's not my personality. I'm a coach at heart. So it's, I need to get out more, because when you see those things, because sometimes we don't see everything, I think it's good. Stick around for that practice. Number one, don't leave don't get frustrated yourself, but wait around and yeah, talk to the assistant coaches and kind of get some scoop, but never pin it as you're against that coach or you're like trying to, they're in the wrong, because sometimes we don't know what's going on in people's lives. So I think for me, what I would do is wait for the appropriate time, pull that coach aside and go, hey, let's go for a walk. What's going on? And then help that coach brainstorm for ideas of, you're frustrated with injuries. Let's rally here. What can we do? What can I do? Our sports team, sports med team, can we help these kids get up and going again? Or is this like detrimental to our program? And I think just having the coach, sometimes, like you said, they need a reminder they're human. They are not perfect and they have moments of weakness, and it's okay. But hey, coach, you are so awesome. You've had so many winning seasons. Don't let this just derail everything you've done. Noticed you're yelling a lot. That's not you. Our kids look up to you, and just remind them what their purpose is, because this is a calling. And so that's kind of how I would handle that, if that makes any sense at all, because it's a delicate situation sometimes, and we don't want our kids to see our coach getting talked to. We want it to be a private where we're helping them through something rather than discouraging them even more.
Yeah, that's outstanding, Amanda. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Tom Brady when he says, hey, I'm 45, I got shit going on, right? Like, we all got stuff going on. Grad school, we got families, you got all that different stuff going on. So it's hard to take time out for yourself, let alone to take time out for your staff. I got 72 coaches that I have to worry about. It's not easy. So I think it's great, Amanda, how you would have handled that. I think that was a perfect way to handle it. Omar, go ahead. Then Tony, you're next.
Yeah, I think, similar, when coaches, everything's about relationships and building relationships. Establishing those relationships with your head coaches are so important, and really trying to connect the human element of things, because obviously they see you as the boss and the person that is responsible for the department. But I think it's important to have a human element. With all my coaches, I always say it's a partnership. I mean, I'm going to hold you accountable. I need you to hold me accountable to the things you need. And what I've done different, this is only my second year, but I was an associate AD at the collegiate level for 12 years, is I gift our coaches John Gordon's energy bus, and really kind of delve into that when I have my fall, my winter, my spring meetings, and talk about, we're responsible for the energy we bring. And I think that's so important before we step on the field, on the court, that we coach from the inside out, not from the outside in. And just reminding them about those things, because there is so much human element to coaching that we forget sometimes. And I think it's important to keep that at the forefront.
Outstanding, Omar. Thank you for that. I love that. Tony, I'm gonna come to you, but I want to just say, here's one little tip out of my toolkit that I start all of my meetings with this question to all of my coaches and my staff. What weighs heaviest on your mind right now? And I shared that, and I give them my answer, what weighs heaviest on my mind. We had a meeting yesterday, and I asked, I said, what weighs heaviest on my mind right now is that I'm concerned about the sustainability of our football program, and it hurts my heart. So, being vulnerable in front of your staff, being vulnerable in front of your students is important. Another thing that I asked my coaches, and I challenge my coaches to do this with their players, is that in a recent coaches meeting, I stood in front of them and I said, what are my weaknesses as an AD? And there was silence. And I said, we're going to stand here and be silent until somebody tells me something, because I am not perfect and I want to get better. How many of us as coaches can stand in front of their players or their staff and ask that question? That's a huge question. Can you be vulnerable like that? That's a big deal. Brother Fisher, what you got for me?
So I would just like to kind of combine what Omar and Amanda spoke to. Omar mentioned coaching from the inside out, and then Amanda spoke to purpose, right? And so I would always lead my coaches back to their why statements. I had all my athletic directors actually create why statements, and then we're going to build, the mission, vision, and purpose statements around those why statements. But I feel like why statements are typically created in the space where, you feel good about yourself, you feel good about the direction of the program, you just all together feel good, right? And so if I can take you back to that moment of when you were creating that why statement and get you to really, hone in on why you do this, I think then, those issues that you currently have in terms of being stressed out or worried about wins and losses or trying to compensate for injured players, that goes away because the student athletes that you have in front of you become, the most important part of what it is that you're trying to accomplish as it relates to your why statement. And so for me, I always try to take them back to the roots, if you will, or their foundation, and get them to a point of understanding why they do it. And once they get back to those roots, then it becomes easy. And I feel like the stress ultimately then goes away.
All right, Tony, thank you for that. Omar, you got one more quick thing. I want to be mindful of time. It's 11 o'clock and I got one more slide to share with y'all before we go. But go ahead, Omar.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't put my hand down. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Carlos, can we get back on? Let's get through the last slide, which are just some of the tips in the toolkit. Lisa, feel free to chime in on any of those things. So in your toolkit, always for your coaches is the importance of continuous learning for them, whether you run meetings and you develop a plan for them in terms of what you want them to come out, or you provide the resources for them to build upon this. So, back in the day, it was just about, oh, just go to a coach's clinic, you'll be all right. No, it's not about that anymore. Let's look at other ways to find ways to develop a plan to support our coaches. So, and in that continuous learning piece, building your staff relationships. Listen, I got a great relationship with I'll just say a dining establishment that has a long bar in the front of it. But anyway, I take my coaches there from time to time just to say, hey, let's let our hair down. Well, those of us who have some, let's let our hair down and let's enjoy ourselves. I'm so proud of you for what you're doing and how you're impacting our kids. And I talk about our why statement too. Tony, thank you for bringing up the why, because that's always important. Creating mentors within your coaching staff. You're going to have coaches that have been doing it for 25 years. You're going to have coaches that you just hired. Put those folks together. And so that those coaches have somebody that they can call or email and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or something's going on. Insist on your coaches. This is part of that continuous learning. Insist on your coaches to attend another sports practice and observe and provide that feedback to the coaches. You can learn a lot from watching other coaches, practice their craft. You might be able to pull something from there. We talked about that self-awareness. Ask your coaches if they're a joystick coach. Those joystick coaches are those coaches that want to dictate and control the movement of their players, right? It's like I used to tell our coaches all the time, hey, we coach in practice, we let the kids play the game, and what you see in the game is what you didn't practice, right? So get all your coaching and all that joystick stuff in practice, and then let your kids play and react to the game so that they can have fun. Self-awareness allows you to be honest with yourself. So again, just having that vulnerability and that honesty with each other can really help you grow your program in a way that's important. Some of the importance of self-awareness is, as Lisa mentioned previously, identify your emotions, understand your motivation, evaluate your time and priorities, utilize your strengths, and make changes towards growth. Those are the importance of self-awareness. Next one, Carlos. And then mental health in general, okay? Tell your coaches, they are not invincible and they don't have to be, right? Coaches need to learn how to ask for help, but I understand some of us, look, my football coach is an NFL player. He's just built differently, right? So I tell him all the time, look, man, I ain't saying that you're weak or anything like that. Let me just coach you up. Let's talk to our kids about their mental toughness. What do we need to do? whatever it is, coaches need to seek out shared life experience with others to know they are not alone in what they are feeling. So we got to be there for them, because the bottom line, and this is what I tell coaches: you can't be good at your craft in any capacity if your mental health is not taken care of. You can't competently do your job. We can't competently do our job if we don't take care of ourselves, and vice versa. So I think that is really 6 things that you can take away amongst the other things that you've heard from the scenarios. I really, really hope, Carlos, you can go ahead to the next one. Lisa just said something always brilliant. Coaches have to show themselves some grace, just as we do as ADs. Amen, Lisa. Lisa knows that is so, so true. So this last 5 minutes or so, we have questions, answers. I gave you Lisa's information. If you guys have a chance, if you want to know what Lisa Bonta Sumii is about, watch her TEDx presentation. That, Lisa, I mean, I've known you for almost 30 years now, girl. Wow. I was so moved and touched by that. I was like, that's my girl right there. So, check that out. If you want to check that out, you can reach out to her. She's doing amazing stuff. I'm about to get her to come down to Francis Parker and transform my student athletes and my coaching staff. So we're very excited about that. Be aware, our next webinar will be on Thursday, November 10th. It's going to be around building culture within your program. Very excited about that. And the book that I'm reading right now, I think it's going to be an incredible professional development opportunity. So any questions or thoughts as we close out? And then Lisa, I'm gonna give you the last word.
Okay, thank you.
No? All right. Lisa, go ahead and finish it out, and then we'll close out.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be invited, Anthony, to be a part of your, organization, and to see all these awesome faces doing incredible work. Like, I want to make sure that, Anthony and I are not asking you to be mental health clinicians, right? Or like counselors. I find that when I present to coaches, I presented a couple of weeks ago to the St. Mary's coaching staff, that I wanted to say, I'm a resource to you, so that you don't have to, so that you're free to coach. Like, allow me to come present to your team and like help the culture start to build around having these conversations and breaking the stigma, so that as ADs, you're freeing up your coaches to not, I don't want to say not worry about it, because they care about their players, but like a resource for them to kind of say like, oh, here's an expert in this area. Mindset and her team can help with this. So it's you're taking care of your coach's mental health by putting someone in place to do these things for them. So please, I'd love to speak to any of your coaches, any of your schools around how Mindset can be supportive, and just, keep up the great work. I'm honored to be here, and just keep it up. You guys are humans too. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves. And I'm very available to each and every one of you if you want to have a further conversation about it. So thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Lisa. Thank you all. I hope you guys have a great day. Have a good weekend. Take care of yourself. Go out and do some things for you and your family. And we'll see you back in November. We got a lot of exciting things happening this year, y'all. And I hope you've already registered for the conference in Nashville this year. We're going to do some great things there. We're going to hear from Candace Story-Lee, the one and only from Vanderbilt University, at our diversity fellowship. Lots of great things happening. And please reach out to us, share with us what's going on, how we can help you. That's what Nomad is. Nomad is a family first and foremost. And we looking forward to continuing to uplift and elevate you, so that we can get the things done for our student athletes. Dave Michelli, always great to see you, my brother. Thank you. And we'll see y'all soon.